The stream is now on. So yeah, Nandu, you can start.
Okay. Ram, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to one and all from wherever you are joining with us. So we Economica, we are actually very happy as well as pleasure to start our second Econ Talk. Initially, we conducted our Econ Talk 1 on the topic R with an introduction to data analysis by research scholar Nitin from IIT Kharagpur. And this is our second talk. So for this day, we have one of the beautiful economists who is not that known to the Indian, but it's relatively he is one of the best economists that we found based on our own aim of community building and removing the barriers that exist between the normal layman as well as the subject economics. So I'm very happy as well as proud to welcome Mr. Professor Subodh Mathur. So let me introduce him first of all. Actually, he's an economist with a doctoral degree from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Cambridge. After completion of his master's from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and graduation from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and master's from Delhi School of Economics. Now he has a wide range of international as well as US policy operational experience, and he has also worked in Asia and Africa as a consultant for the World Bank, and he was known for his various publications, and he was also a part of DC Public Service Commission, DC Department of Energy and Environment, Maryland Energy Administration, and US Postal Services. He has proven teaching also, like he is occasional adjunct professor of economics at the American University, Washington, DC, and he teaches mainly graduate courses over there. His recently published book, that's the main agenda of our meeting also, that's India's Path to Prosperity 2020-2047, a workable agenda for the next 10 to 15 years, briefly elucidates and answer the question, what do we have to do to make India a prosperous country by 2047, when we will celebrate the 100 years of political independence. So, sir, may I welcome you to the floor to talk on the book as well as on the topic. And the meeting will go as like this. The 20 minutes will be a talk by Professor Subodh sir, then followed by question and answer session. So on behalf of Economica family, I welcome you to this function, and the floor is open for you, sir.
Well, thank you so much for asking me to come here and to talk to you. Let me just clarify 2 points before we begin. I no longer teach anything anywhere and have no links to any college or university. So the title of professor is somewhat virtual, not real. And I also want to say that I don't have any consulting work anymore with the World Bank. Now it's 2 years, and I'm not looking for any work there. So this is just me with as an individual economist who is interested in India and thought about India. So let me get started. There's still a number of people coming up. Could you now share the PowerPoint presentation, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so there's the cover. Let's just go on. There's an email over there, and it'll come back at the end, but let's go to the next slide. So why have I written this book? It's aimed mainly at young people. The reason is they will be around in 2047. Chances are that even if I'm around, I won't understand anything anymore. So, this book is aimed for young people. They are too often ignored, even though they are India's future. They have the energy and enthusiasm, but I felt that they need to be empowered, and they need to be empowered with information, because they will see the next 25 years, and they need to know what should happen in the next 25 years. The book is aimed at everyone, not at specialists. Economic progress can't be left to a few. It is going to involve all of us. And I wrote the book because I believe that India can be prosperous. I'm an optimist. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 5 years. It's going to take time. And that's why I have written it with the idea that there's an agenda for the next 10 to 15 years. And then there is a goal for 25 years. So be prosperous in 25 years. So let's go to the next slide. So these are the chapters of the book, and the chapters that I'll put in bold, those are the only chapters I'm going to cover here because there's a lot of information, but I just want to go to the highlights. So let's go to the next slide. So let's set the stage. So the chapter 0 is only 2 pages in the book. It sets the stage for the book. India will celebrate 100 years in 2047. Will we be prosperous by then? So what's the plan for the next 25 years? It's tough to plan for so long. So phase 1 is the next 10 to 15 years, lay the foundation for prosperity. And for laying that foundation, we can have a workable agenda. And that's what this book is about. And phase 2 is after that, continue the rapid economic progress so that we actually become prosperous by that time. So next slide, please. Okay, so what is it that the book is about? The book focuses on resolving key issues and barriers to economic progress. There's a well-known term called SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. Here, the focus is on the W, the weaknesses part. And focusing on your weaknesses can be a sign of depression, or it can be a sign of optimism, because unless you accept your weaknesses, you're not going to become strong. You have your strengths, but so long as you have your weaknesses, you are not going to make it. So the focus here is not a negative focus. It's a very positive focus. Like, if you're going to want to become fit, you have to realize that you are not fit, that you are obese. Only then you can become fit. If you are an alcoholic, the first thing they make you admit is that I am an alcoholic, because only then you can admit and get better. So here the focus is on weaknesses. And the weaknesses are such that they will take time to find workable solutions. We can't do it in 1 year or 2 years. The book doesn't offer any detailed solutions, only broad ideas. Why? Because I want to stimulate public discussion of the key issues. And there is no jargon in the book, no mathematics, and you don't have to have a BA degree or any other degree in economics to read this book. If you are just an average person, you should be able to read it and understand it. If not, I have not succeeded in my objectives. Okay, next slide, please. So what was the economic status in 1947? There are so many young people here. They have no clue as to what the life was like in 1947. Let me just say that for the Aam Aadmi, life was, in economic terms, terrible. Don't ever get fooled into people saying those were the golden years. They were not. I wasn't around in 1947, but I was around shortly after that. It was not a great economic life. It was grim. We have food short, low income. Most people were illiterate, low life expectancy. Hardly anyone had phones, cars, or healthcare. It was a seriously bad set of economic conditions. Next slide, please. What's the status now? You can judge yourself, but let me just say it very in short. We are still poor, but we have the potential now to be well off. That's the key difference compared to 1947. We have built the foundation and a few rooms of a new home instead of a hut. We all used to live in huts. Now we don't live in huts. The house is not complete. And if you like sports, we are now a quarterfinalist economy. We can make it to the quarterfinals. In the old days, we were not even allowed to participate in the tournament. This is just a metaphor. Okay, we all know what the status is, so I won't spend time. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I have picked 2 key variables to see the progress since independence. One is literacy. You can't be productive economically if you are illiterate. And secondly, you must live. You can't be productive if you die young. So if you look at the situation in 1947, 12% of the people were literate, and life expectancy was around 30 years. So, you died young. There's nothing to look forward to old age. Most people died young. If you read the accounts of families before independence, it was all about death. Today, we are with a literacy rate of 78%. China is 97%. Our life expectancy is 70 compared to 30. That's a huge, huge, huge jump. But China is 77, US is 78. So we are there, doing somewhat better than before, but not good enough. Let's go to the next slide, please. So to whom should we compare ourselves? China. That's what my comparison is. So let me look at this bar a bit carefully. The first column shows that the GDP per capita in China is 5 times of India. They're 5 times more well off in income than the average Indian. Second column shows you the ratio of China to India growth rate over the last 20 years. Notice I have excluded the COVID years because COVID is COVID and has nothing to do with economics. So even in the last 20 years, the Chinese growth rate of GDP was above India's growth rate. How are we going to ever catch up with them if they're 5 times ahead of us and the growth rate is more than us? Well, in the last 5 years, their growth rate is the same as ours. But if our growth rate is the same as ours, we'll still never catch up with China. So we have to get ahead of their growth rate. Fortunately, China has slowed down a bit, but still they're 5 times ahead of us. Next, please. So I said we will focus on the weaknesses. What's the criteria that we are going to use to define the weaknesses? Which are the key weaknesses? These are the 3 criteria. They are my own creation. It's not something I've taken from the literature. First, to be included in my book, the issue must be a significant part of India's population and economy. Second, it must be a major barrier to economic progress. And second, it must be difficult to resolve with no clear consensus on how to resolve it. If there's a clear consensus on how to resolve it, then we should be doing it. Why should we focus on it? Why should it take 10 to 15 years? It should be easily done. So these are the 3 criteria by which I have selected the key barriers. Next, please. Okay. Chapter 2 begins with what I call as meta-economic factors. This is not normal in most economic policy books to focus on factors that are non-economic in nature. But now we know very well, this is not something that I have created. It's well known to economists that our economic progress is driven by key non-economic factors that affect the economy. To simplify, I have called them meta-economic drivers. Again, that's not a term that's widely used. It's a term that I have developed here. What's a meta-economic driver? For example, we need a laser-sharp national focus on economic progress. For too many years, we have focused on social and divisive issues. We need to realize that if we focus on other issues, the economy won't do well by itself. And I just say that these factors are too often ignored by economists. They live in the world of economic policy, not realizing that economic growth, economic progress takes place in the context of the country that we are operating in. Next, please. I'll just focus on the one factor, non-economic or meta-economic factor. There are many in the book, but I'll focus on one that I think is the most important, and I will discuss this in chapter 8. And that is that the union government alone cannot bring prosperity. Number one, the union government's economic role was greatly diminished by the 1991 reforms. This is not brought out very clearly in the economic literature, that it actually set the union government in a smaller role. Unfortunately, union government hasn't realized it since then, And every union government tries to have a major role in the economy, even though it's not quite justified. And private firms have become quite capable. In the old days, when I was young, everything was driven by government. But for example, we developed the COVID vaccine without the union government. We don't need it. The union government doesn't have to be everywhere, and it alone cannot bring prosperity. So this is a key meta-economic factor. And backing it up is that the Constitution gives major economic powers to chief ministers. So, and the economic powers are both economic and meta-economic. And we have the state list and the concurrent list. And I'll show you an example in the next slide. So here is a table which I have created. There are 3 others in my book. This one looks at the meta-economic powers in the states list. So in the left-hand side, we have the 3 subjects in the states list in the Constitution: public order and police, local government agencies such as municipal corporations, and public health hospitals and dispensaries. Now that last one has become so clear from COVID-19 that we are suffering a major economic loss. By the way, Bangladesh is not suffering the same economic loss as us, because we don't have good public health hospitals and dispensaries. We just don't have it. And the economy is suffering because of it. We just aren't able to get the economy going because our health system, and let's admit it, let's not pretend that, oh, we have a lower rate of this and a lower rate of that. We have a loss of GDP because our public health system cannot deliver the vaccines and the treatment to the people. And look at the other factors. This is public order and police. I will talk later about medium, small, and enterprises. And they are hassled by the police everywhere. The police cannot function without the police demanding bribes from them. So that's a major hassle to develop those enterprises. And then the local government agencies, such as municipal corporations, they don't deliver services. Where they do, shops are clean, streets are clean, we get a better economy. So let me just say that this is my list. We have 3 others in my book, which talk about the concurrent list, economic factors, and meta-economic. Excuse me. So this is by way of introduction. Let me now jump to my conclusions so that you know where I'm going. So next, please. So this is from chapter 8, and here is my slogan, which is the big picture. It's PM plus CMs plus NPIs. NPIs are non-profit institutions, not PM alone. If we are going to be prosperous by 2047, we cannot think that the PM alone, by PM I mean the union government alone, will do the job. It requires the PM plus CM plus NPIs, not the PM alone. Excuse me. So the state's government must focus much more on economic progress. And I list in the book what they must do. We also need non-profit institutions to step in, especially to promote productive activities. Examples of non-profit institutions, and by the way, they are not NGOs. These are, I'm specifically using the term non-profit institutions to distinguish them from NGOs. Amul, the parent foundation of Amul is a non-profit institution. Seva, which is in Ahmedabad, it's a trade union. And FPOs are farmer productivity organizations, which the union government has been pushing quite a bit in the last few years. And who is going to help our small firms to digitize and access finance? Again, these would be, say, non-profit institutions that young people have set up. Who's going to help big cities better manage traffic congestion? Right now, it's to the police. The police, poor people, they are used to policing. How can they become experts on managing traffic congestion, which is multiple causes and needs a multifaceted solution? Somebody has to provide that package, and that will come out of non-profit institutions. They could be research institutions, they could be think tanks. whatever. And there are many other niche areas for non-profit institutions, because really, if we think that the chief ministers are going to do a great job, they may, but we need to be sure that there are people like you and me and young people especially who are growing up with a lot of enthusiasm and energy who can step in and get the job done. Next, please. Okay, so which are the key states? This is my attempt at saying, look, what are the states that really matter to the Indian economy? Obviously, every state matters, but I have taken 14 states, which I call as K14. They account for about 85% of the population and 83% of the GDP. So here is our focus area. I have the P7. P7 means powerhouse states. The P7 states have 33% of the population and they produce 52% of the GDP. If they do badly, we are sunk. So which are these 7 powerhouse states? There's Gujarat, Karnataka, Kerala, Telangana, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh. And the little line above shows you the ratio of their per capita GDP to India's per capita GDP. So they're more than pulling their weight. After that, I have O5, which I call as Opportunity 5 states. They have 25% of the population and 19% of the GDP. So they rank below the 7 powerhouse states. This Rajasthan, West Bengal, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, and Assam. And you can see that the line at the top shows that their ratio to India's GDP is declining. But really, if these 5 states pick up and do much better in the future, then we are in much better shape, in good shape. And the last 2, I call E2, that's a euphemism. It stands for essential. It's essential that these 2 states do better. This is UP and Bihar. And you can see that together they have 12% of the GDP and 26% of the population. India cannot be prosperous unless these 2 states pick up, because 26% of your population remains poor. You can't be a prosperous country. It's essential that these 2 states pick up. And, they're lagging behind, even though the national policy is the same and they're politically powerful states, and yet they are not producing what they should. And this is not a critical statement for the current chief ministers. This has been going on for decades, that these 2 states lag behind. If these 2 states continue to lag behind the way they lag behind now, we cannot put forward any national policy and say that, look, all of India will be prosperous. It won't be, because 26% of the population will be way behind. So here's the focus on the chief ministers. Next, please. So what should they do? Of course, we should focus on the union government, but since I'm emphasizing the chief ministers, I want to put them first. So I'm saying that the most significant national economic challenge is major makeover of agriculture. Our agricultural system is dysfunctional. We have too many farm and non-farm rural families and their kids who are unlikely to ever become well off doing what they're doing now. They're poor. We have farm loan waivers. We have Narega. We have all sorts of problems for them. We put them in lousy schools in the villages. They have no health facilities. They are never going to be prosperous under the current system. It just won't happen if we leave them over there and give them lousy schools and give them lousy healthcare. Those kids and their parents are never going to be productive, and not all of them can move to big cities because there's no space in big cities for them and there's no job. So we can't be prosperous with these poor people staying where they are. So if we want to be prosperous, we have to have a major makeover of agriculture. It's also, by the way, too resource intensive. It's a major user of water. It uses far too much water. We are not at all, we have formulas in agriculture will say, make every drop count. I think it's far from every drop. Everything in the farm system is in bad shape. The water table is dropping in key states, Punjab is waterlogged, so on. So people in agriculture know these problems, and I discussed them in my chapter. And the CMs know their farmers. They know where the problems are. They know what is to be done. We cannot expect the union government to take account of this. And by the way, agriculture is a state subject. And so the farmers know their farms, CMs know their farmers, and must take the lead. So this is the number one economic challenge, the major makeover of agriculture. Next, please. What else should the chief ministers do? Maintain internal harmony and deliver better governance. Improve educational and health facilities. They are not under the control of the union government. The schools in the villages, the colleges in the small cities, the union government doesn't run them. The dispensaries, the union government doesn't run them. I'm an energy person, and I am just so sad to see the terrible state of power discoms in India. We are very good at generating electricity, but we are terrible at bringing it to the people. The discoms are losing money every day. The union government tries Uday 1, Uday 2. Even before that, they tried. But the problem is in the states. It's the chief ministers. We have a few discoms that do a good job. It's not rocket science. It's chief ministers who are unwilling to make the power discoms world class. And they must support MSMEs. These are the micro, small, and medium enterprises. And they must develop their smaller cities. Why these last two? They are going to provide jobs for people who leave rural areas. They are going to have to leave those villages. Where are they going to go? They are not going to go to the big cities. There's no space. And they are not going to get jobs in the firms that come with FDI. They're not going to get jobs in the auto business. They're going to work for micro, small, and medium enterprises. The union government has lots of programs for MSMEs, but really their economic status depends on the local economic conditions. It's the police who demand bribes, it's the government agencies to harass them and don't support them in any way. And here the NPIs can have a key role. Go in and help those small people, the dhabawalas, the corner shop walas, the small startups, not the technical types, but the small places. Okay, next, please. So what's the role of the union government? As I see it, to become, first, they must strengthen the meta-economic drivers. Number one, reduce external threats. In economics, we talk about guns versus butter. Obviously, we must remain secure. We must have the armed forces we need. But do we have any way of, through diplomacy, of reducing our external threats, which are mainly from China and Pakistan? Can we come to some form of reduced threats from those, maybe through spying, maybe through diplomacy? I leave it to the experts. Maintain internal harmony, which is a way, why should I care about it? Because it disrupts production. We don't want all those chakka jams and all those horrible things, buses being burned. It just disrupts the production process. Ensure a free press. It increases accountability. Maintain an independent judiciary. Why? It gives investors confidence in dispute settlement. We have just seen that the union government has rolled back a long old policy, which is creating terrible conditions. And if we had an independent judiciary, we wouldn't have had the problems that we had. And then have, finally, professionally run economic institutions, and we know what those are. Next, please. Okay. The most important production-related issue facing the Indian economy is our underdeveloped financial system, because the financial system supports production in all sectors. Absence of finance favors a few large firms. I am a bright young man, or a bright young woman, I have a great idea, but I cannot get the money. So who gets to develop that product? It's a few large firms because they have their own money. So this is the most important role of the union government. Make sure, along with RBI, that India's financial system provides adequate debt, equity, venture capital, and modern financial services to all firms and households. We do have patchy efforts. Our union government wants to provide loans to small enterprises through the Mudra scheme. But it's not the union government's job to provide these loans. It's the job of the financial system. And none of those small firms can tap the equity markets, the stock markets. And the venture capital is coming from the US and Singapore. Where's the Indian money? Who's sitting on that? And the modern financial services, we are quite focused on digital payments. But digital payments are good, but that's not the same as having modern financial services to all firms and households. So this is, according to me, the key thing that will drive the Indian economy, that we need to have a world-class financial system. Not a patchwork, not a few things here and there, but complete. Next, please. And what else should the union government do? It should make India a leader in emerging technologies. We have the skilled people. And if they are not in India and they have gone abroad like I have, I'll bring them back. They can do it. China is doing it. They're bringing their people back. Which are the emerging technologies? Digital infrastructure, electricity storage. We can't use solar and wind unless we can store their power for the time when it is needed. Agriculture, we don't have the emerging technologies. There is something called econTALK, which is all over the place. People are using satellite data. I am working with a group of young Indians who are involved in that. And in finance, we need to be a world-class financial technology and systems. We need to be on the cutting edge. We have the people. It's not like we can't do it. We can do it. Some of the work would have to be done by leading economic entities, which are called NPIs. We need to build them up. We can't just say that we have the people. People need places to work in. Okay, next, please. Okay, so finally, one more thing for there's somebody else speaking. Can we mute them, please? Okay, I'll just continue. The role of the union government: improve railways and roads, make them world class. We are building lots of roads. We aren't really doing a great job in railways. We have a plan to import 20th century technology called the bullet train. That's not going to cut it, guys. That's from ancient technology. We need to improve our railways and roads. We need to have digital infrastructure. The government can't do it. It'll be done by the private firms. And we need to support our firms to become export competitive. We can't just say, look, our firms are good enough for us. No, we cannot be prosperous unless our firms are world class. And it would be very useful to make sure that the rupee becomes an international currency, because then all our activities will be judged by the world standard, not by saying it's good enough for India. What's good enough for India is that India is at the top of the world. Next, please. Other considerations. Don't destroy the local environment. Polluted Ganga is so hard to clean up, huge loss. People may not remember it, but the first effort to clean up the Ganga was made in Rajiv Gandhi's time. That's a long, long time ago. Even the current government has not been able to clean it up. There is a plan to clean 21 sites. Come on, guys. We cannot have this kind of pollution going on and on. We need to stop this. We cannot have economic growth that destroys the local environment. Delhi air. It's an international embarrassment. Every year we have the same bad air. Every year we discuss its causes and we don't get it done. And it hurts the local people. Look at the lungs of the poor people in Delhi. You will find black carbon soot in there. It's very tough for politicians. They're all looking for votes in the next election. They're not looking to see what's happening in the next 15 years, 20 years. And they destroy the local environment. They let it happen. Destroy the local environment because we can get some growth, we can get some progress, but it comes at a very high cost. NPIs must step in here as needed. We had the Chipko movement long back, it did something, but that was a very narrow thing. NPIs must step in as needed. particularly, as I say, for young people. They've grown up in better off India, not the India that me and my cohort grew up in. They need to put some of their resources back to make these things happen. Last, please. Final thoughts? All comments are welcome. There's an email there. And if there are enough people who have read the book and are interested, I will set up a free discussion forum. The aim of the book is to simulate discussion, to find the solutions. And if I've left out some key problems, then we can discuss that also. So thank you for listening to me and giving me a chance to propagate my ideas. Thank you very much. That's the end of my discussion and presentation. It goes back to the organizers now, how they want to organize the question answer session.
Hello, am I audible now? Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was a wonderful presentation and it gave us a lot of insights on how India should look forward to. And definitely, I hope the viewers also would, buy this book and also read this book. And like Sir mentioned towards the end, like if more people read this and more, if it reaches more people, then like it could actually initiate a lot of discussions and debates so that there could be like more insights towards the same story. So I'll maybe for now I'll read out the questions what we received via the registration. So okay. So the first question is what mandatory reforms should be introduced other than the education and health to improve the country economically?
I have focused on the financial system and agriculture as the two key issues that must be tackled. So and to make India internationally competitive, we aren't going to get the rupee to be international currency unless we improve our production system. And so to get there, my two key points are improve the financial system. And there are lots of reports about how to improve the financial system, what to do. And we are making small progress, but small progress is not enough. It's like scoring a single or a two runs in a cricket match, where what we need are fours and sixes. So we need to go in, the union government needs to go in with the bank, and the RBI also needs to come in with the bank, because they are too slow to supervise the banks. We have NPAs and the RBI lets that happen. They don't bring up more banks. They have authorized 2 new banks in last so many years. And they are slowly trying to get some things done. I'm sorry, it's not going to work. They need to hit fours and sixes. These cautious singles and, playing safe, it's not going to happen. And young people, please don't put up with it. We can't have this anymore. That once in a while we have some incremental reform here, we do this and we do that and we debate it. No, we need fours and sixes. That's the big bang we need in finance. And we cannot really hope to make any progress till, as I said, UP and Bihar pick up, and nobody can say what to do to them. But the chief ministers must start to make agriculture more modern, more productive, and look after the people who have to leave agriculture. They have small farms. They can never make any money on those farms. They lose money every year. We just subsidize them in various ways, and we call them our farmers, and we say Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. But really, we're leaving them in hell. So we need to start saying, look, where are these kids going to go? They are 5 years old now. In 20 years, what are they going to do? Beg on the streets? So those are the two things I would say that we must really get the focus on: the union government on the financial sector reforms, and the chief ministers on so many other things. But they need to start thinking about what we need to do to get our agriculture modern, world class, and to move the poor people out of there. into places where they can be truly productive.
Yes, sir. So the next question is, given the state of the social fabric in the country, how likely is India to be on the path of economic development? Also, what do you think, which platform of thinking is better for a nation's development, especially a country as complex as India, a nationalism or B, globalization?
Well, I'll skip the first question. It's outside my area of expertise, and
Okay,
I'll let others handle it. Uh,
sure.
I don't think that we really need to worry about nationalism or globalism. I think we need to know that we need to be world class. It doesn't mean we have to depend on others for anything. We can be at the front of all technologies. We are not going, today we are saying, oh, it's great. Samsung is coming to make cell phones in India. I'm saying, guys, how can it be great if Samsung is coming to make cell phones in India? I mean, what's so crazy? Cell phones, it's not rocket science. We have the people. So why can't we do that? Why can't we? I think we need to be at the forefront of technology. We have, in 70 years, we have built the IITs. They are world-class institutions. They are not doing good research. We need to put in the research. We need to put in the time, and we need to be the leaders. People should be saying, Indian firms are going to come and make cell phones in Africa. That is the news. If you call that globalization, I'm happy. If you call it that India is dominant, I'm even more happy. Why not? Why are we not making batteries, which the whole world needs? We It's not like we don't have skilled people, and if they're not in India, if they are NRIs or foreign citizens, whatever they are, bring them back, put them in the place, don't fight them. And I'm sure there are enough people in India who can do the thinking. There are startups, but we don't give them the venture capital. They're all going to US and France and Japan and Singapore to get money. It's not like we don't have the money, we just don't channel it to our own people. So let us say my sense is that India should be a world class leader. The economy would depend only upon itself, but we will be able to show the world that we can do things. That's my view.
Okay, sir. So the next question is, how to combine government procurement and commercial approach of solar PV based electricity?
We are doing reasonably well in solar PV. Okay? There's no real need to tinker with it. Okay. And by the way, solar is last century's technology. Solar is a done deal. There's nothing great about solar anymore. It's finished. I mean, I was a pioneer in solar in 1992. It's over. What is the new issue is how to store the solar power, because we need the electricity all the time, not just when the sun shines. We need the wind power all the time. We need to store it. Unless we can find a way to store it, it's no use having solar and wind. Everybody knows that by now, and everybody, that's why, is developing storage. I mentioned storage. So solar, it's a done deal. We are good at it. We are world class in producing the cheapest solar power. But you produce the solar power, there's nowhere to store it. So what are you going to do at night? You know, what are you going to do? It's not enough. So we need the solar storage. We need the store. India has a tiny pilot for storage. It's no good. We need to be developing the battery technology or any other form of storage. And if we are going to do electric cars, we need the batteries too. We are not going to do, if we are going to say in 10 years, oh, yes, we make electric cars, but by the way, the batteries come from some foreign countries. I mean, how, for young people, that's shameful. Why the heck can't we develop these technologies on our own? We can. And so that's my answer. Solar is ancient technology. If somebody asks me, I mean, I was a pioneer in in the world in developing solar technology. I say, are you interested in solar? My answer is no. It's finished. It's done deal. It's a commodity. It's nothing there. What is needed is to develop the way to store it so that we can use it as and when it is needed, not just at the time that the sun shines, because That's not the way. Electricity is a 24/7 business. It's not occasional business. Okay. So that's my okay. Next question, please.
Okay, the next is, what is your opinion on the asset monetization plan? I think the question is from the same person. So the other one is, do you believe the economic slowdown we have faced since 2018 is a result of events beyond our control, of just bad governance and policy making? And the third one is, how can capitalism, economic openness, and lack of protectionism operate without leading to economic inequality in any economy?
Okay, I'll skip the first one because it's
Okay.
about the current economic situation,
Yeah.
and my focus is on the next 25 years.
Yeah.
That one doesn't address any of the issues that I mentioned, so I'll skip that.
Sure.
So, could you tell me the second question again?
The second is, do you believe the economic? Okay, I mean the slowed. Okay, then I'll talk about third one. So it is, how can
No, 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 I
capitalism?
know. Okay, let me handle the second one, slow down.
Okay,
Right
okay, okay.
now, okay, it's a very important question.
Mm,
The problem is that in India, the share of investment relative to GDP has been declining. And that is our own creation. It is not due to external factors. It's Indian investment as a share of GDP. And that has unfortunately declined. And we need to bring that way up. At one point, China was investing 40% of its GDP. The share of investment to GDP in China was over 35%. In India, it's not bad. It's 28, 29, 30, 32, but we need to up it. We need to up it. And all of those meta-economic factors that I mentioned are key to increasing the investment. So if you read my chapter 2 on meta-economic factors, it begins with what has driven Indian investment so low. Okay, so all of those meta-economic factors are needed to bring investment back up. Investment is affected by the sense of how the political system is. The political system, if it is focused on economic growth and on making things happen, then investment will be up. So, indeed, it is our own creation, that it is our own doing. There are stories now that some companies are thinking of leaving Mumbai because they don't like the current political system. Now, politics is politics, and it'll always be there. It's in democracy; it's there. But what I am saying is that everybody needs to be focused on giving the Indian investors a chance to make products that are world class. So it is indeed our own fault. Okay, next one.
okay, sir. So the next one is, what's your projection of GDP growth for the next 5 years? When do you see the interest rate cycle reversing?
Okay, I'll skip the interest rate question.
Okay.
I'll focus on the GDP question. We need to aim, if we are going to talk about GDP, and in my book, I don't really focus on GDP because I'm more focused on removing the barriers. But if we are going to have a target GDP growth rate, the P7 states are over 10%. If you look at my P7 states, they are hitting a GDP growth rate within the state of more than 10%. Problem is, you can't talk about India's GDP growth rate unless you recognize that you have two states that are lagging behind and the next five states, which I called as the opportunity five states. So we can hit a 10% GDP growth rate. There's no question in my mind, because we can hit a 35% investment to GDP rate. And if our capital output ratio is about 3.5, I'm now using some jargon, but we could have that capital output ratio, especially if we are going to support micro, small, and medium enterprises. So, with strong support for venture capital, startup firms, MSMEs, and of course, giving the big firms also a chance, we can hit a 10% GDP growth rate, even if the two big states lag behind a bit, because the powerhouse states can easily hit 12, 13, 14, 15% GDP growth rate within their states. They're quite capable of doing it. So yes, 10% GDP growth rate is my implicit target if we are going to talk in terms of GDP.
Okay, sir. So the next one is, should we be focusing on or chasing economic growth, considering the negative impacts it has had on environment, society, and health or stress, or do we need other pathways or metrics to focus on human well-being and sustainability?
I've already, I've already made my view on the environment clear. So we don't need other metrics. We need to just protect the local environment. It's common sense. It's not something that we need an index or a metric or anything. You see the damage to the environment. You see the forests being cut. You see the water being polluted. You see the air being polluted, and we need to stop it. Okay? So I don't see we need some metrics of well-being and sustainability. We need the economic progress, sure, but the economic progress cannot come at the expense of having to fix the problem 15 years later, 20 years later, and spending lots of money at that time. That's not progress. That's just backwards. So we need to, I you know, I'm not looking for new metrics, new definitions. I am much more practical. We need to protect the environment, guys. You are 25 years old. When you are 50 years old, do you want to breathe clean air, or do you want to see all your forests gone? No, you don't. So you will take action to make sure that the your legacy is protected. Actually, I don't think of it in terms of the environment. I think of it in terms of your endowment of nature. Your endowment of nature, it shouldn't be eaten up by my generation, right? And you shouldn't eat up your children's endowment. It's an easy trick to take your capital endowment and turn it into current income. That's not the way we need to go. We need to protect the environment. We don't need new metrics. We don't need discussion. We just need to make sure that the politicians, and of all parties, by the way, it's not a criticism of one party, that they don't let the environment be destroyed in favor of what they call as economic progress. That's not economic progress.
Okay, sir. So the next question is, how relevant are economic theories to current world dynamics?
I am a professional economist. So let me not answer that question. Let me leave it to others. Okay. I am a card carrying economist.
Yeah.
I am theoretically inclined. I don't write mathematically and I don't write in jargon, but I am one of them. Okay.
Okay,
So
sir.
you have my answer. I am one
Yeah.
of them. I have not given up being an economist. I have
Mm.
not given up being an academic type
Yeah.
economist. I have not given up being a theoretical economist. So I'm one of them. Don't ask me.
Sure, sir. Sure. It's fine. Okay. The next question is, what is the greater threat to India's development goals? Is it domestic politics or border conflicts?
What's the second part? What
Uh,
economic?
Border conflicts.
Well,
I feel
we
war or
do
something.
talk about, I do talk about guns versus butter, okay? And I do say that we should get an implicit peace dividend. We need to fix our borders, but I'm not an expert on it, and I will leave it to the experts to say what can be done and what cannot be done. And then I leave it to the expert to say what amount of armed forces we need to fix this. Okay, I'm not going to get into it. I don't have the expertise. But what I'm going to say is that an economist I know, guns versus butter is the first thing we teach in econ. If we can manage somehow, with the help of experts, to reduce our external threats and turn them into lesser threats or turn them into coexistence, if not peace, then we will be able to focus more on developing our economy. So, but they are, to be frank, the armed forces today, the money is being spent on them is not the main reason for holding India back. It would be a nice, small, incremental peace dividend, but it won't change the whole picture. The whole picture is that we don't invest enough of our own money, which is available to be invested.
Okay, sir. So the next question is, the standards of prosperity of nations 25 to 30 years from now will be different from what we see today. Seeing that ahead, how do you tackle that in accounting of prosperity? Also, how do you compare it relatively with other countries?
Uh, my approach in the book is to say that we can spend a lot of our time and effort getting involved in this discussion. I don't want to be involved in this discussion. I mean, I do, but not in this book. And in the book, what I'm saying is let's get rid of our key weaknesses, guys. Then, however, we develop with our strengths, that's up to us. That's up. Right now, we can't do it because we are bogged down by our weaknesses. And if we remove those weaknesses, then we can go to the strengths and the opportunities. So remember, SWOT is strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. If you remove your weaknesses and your threats, then you can take advantage of your strengths and opportunities. Like when we got the opportunity to become a leader in IT around 2000, we did. Nobody had said we would become a global leader in IT, but we did. Why? Because we had the strengths. We didn't have the weaknesses. We had the educated people who knew COBOL, who knew how to do this work. And even if they didn't know how to do this work, they could learn how to do this work. They were smart people, which had come up through our educational system. As bad as the educational system is, it did produce some people like that. And when the world opened up the opportunity, we took it, and we are unbeatable in it in a way. There's no real competition to our software firms. We, of course, we don't have the cutting edge of technologies. We don't have our own Google, we don't have our own Facebook, we don't have our own Zoom. We are all using borrowed stuff. But when it comes to the development of those, we took advantage of the opportunities. And that's how, what I'm saying, that look, let's not focus on what opportunities will arise. Let's be ready to take advantage of opportunities as they arise. And if you look at my chapter 3, I look to say we need to build a flexible workforce. The flexible workforce will take advantage of opportunities as they arise. So be prepared, be ready, and take advantage of opportunities as they arise. Okay, next, if we have time.
One second, sir. Yeah. So the next question is, do you think okay, do you think India is on the right economic track? What, according to you, would be the position of the Indian economy among the other worlds in the coming 50 years, considering the current economic policies?
Well, we aren't on the right economic track. We are not so off the track also. Let us put it this way. We are not totally off the track, but we are on the slow track. We are not on the fast track. We are quite happy with 6%, 7% GDP growth. It's not going to work. We need to be on the fast track. We aren't on the fast track. So I would say that's what I would say. We are on the medium track or slow track. We say, oh, agricultural growth is 3%. Guys, it's not going to work. Okay. We need fours and sixes. We aren't going to be satisfied with cautious singles and occasional two runs. We need to hit fours and sixes. So we aren't on the right track. In that sense, we aren't on the best track. Let's put it this way. We could be doing much, much better than what we are doing now. And with that, in by 2047, I hope all of you will be there to witness and really enjoy the 100 years of independence. I won't be around, I know, and my cohort won't be around, but we want to leave you with the way to be there and to really enjoy, because what the heck, we didn't become independent to remain poor, right? We can't keep blaming the British now. Oh my God, those British came and they left us so poor. They took $3 trillion from us, $4 trillion. Forget it. We need to create it ourselves and get it to a place where in 2047 you can have the full year as an enjoyment year, guys. This is what I'm trying to tell you.
Sure.
Okay.
Sir, just last two questions. So, what do you think about trust as a lubricant for India's engine of growth?
I don't understand the question.
Okay.
What does trust mean?
Yeah, it can mean, yeah. So, okay, maybe
So
we
let's
could
skip
go.
it because
Yeah,
I
sure,
cannot
sir.
answer.
Sure, sure. The next is your views on privatization and monetization of national assets, especially at a subpar lease rate, where an ideal approach should have been an English auction.
I'd say, the monetization, I said I'll skip
Okay.
because it is a very short run strategy. It's not something that addresses the long term question. On privatization, uh, let me say that every union government's been saying they'll do it. And even the state governments say sometimes they have some assets. It's a sideshow. The main show is the fresh investment that can come from the private sector. We need the growth will come from the private sector. The economic progress will come from the small firms, medium, small, micro firms, and it will come from large firms. That's where the focus should be. Yes, the PSUs, which are loss making, are a drag on the union government, and they are trying to, but they don't have the guts to go through with it. Let's put it this way. It's a lot of guts required to go through with privatization, but some people are doing it. Like Odisha has just handed over its discoms to Tata. It doesn't make national news because nothing about Odisha makes national news, but it's a pioneer. Delhi is already run by Reliance and Tata Power Discoms. So we can do it, but the states are doing it. Union government's having a rough time and they've had it for 15, 20 years, getting rid of its assets. I don't know where they'll go. I mean, go back to Mr. Vajpayee. He had a ministry for divestment or disinvestment. It's very hard because nobody is going to take those PSUs with the workers that they have. Nobody wants them with the workers that they have. And the only way to deal with the PSUs is to get rid of many of the workers who are employed there. And no government has the guts to do that. Right? No government has the guts to say, we are going to fire so many workers. And if you have those workers, nobody wants it. Now, the discoms have been privatized with the workers. Essentially, they people who took it over paid off those workers to go home, right? They say, okay, listen, please retire. We'll give you some money. Go home. Now, when you have a large national PSU, nobody's going to buy Air India and say, we'll keep all the staff, we'll keep all the facilities. Then what's the point? They're not going to lose money and they have to cut costs. So I would say it's a very nationally oriented public news these days, but the news should be, why is India's GDP investment ratio to GDP so small? Why is it so low? Where's our money not being invested? What the government money is, it's a sideshow in the long run. It's an important political issue, but it's not an important issue in the long run.
Yes, sir. So one last question from the chat box within the room. So the question is how to circumvent the middleman culture which drains away the efforts of the governments as well as bleed the poor farmers. Subsidies are definitely not the answer.
No, subsidies have nothing to do with the middleman, but the technology is there now. The middleman is being bypassed through technology, and certainly that's where the focus should be. The subsidies are now directly delivered to the bank accounts of poor people, to the Dhanjan bank accounts, and they can even handle it on mobile, and even the purchases can be done through open source platforms. So the technological innovations, and India is fully capable of those technological innovations. They can create a direct link between let us say, a much more direct link between consumer and producer. Okay? So we don't really need, but we do need storage. We do need somebody to take the risk, which is associated with it. But this middleman culture is really an old story. It's not the story of the future of India, because we have the technologies already functional. We just need to step it up. So I don't list it as a major issue because it's already being handled and can be handled. There's not much difficulty in it.
Okay, sir. So, would you mind taking some questions if someone has from the room, within the room, if they have some questions, or like should we end the talk?
Listen, you are the boss. You are organizing it.
Yeah, I mean,
You
if you
tell
have more,
me.
sure, sir.
I'm at your disposal as
Sure,
long
sir.
as
Sure.
you want me to be.
Okay, sir. Okay, okay. So, if anyone in this room wants to ask, they can unmute yourself and ask the question, or even a comment if you want to make, not just a question, anything related to the presentation or the book.
I have a question.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
Please.
Yes. Hello. My name is Abhijay. My question is, I saw at the beginning of the talk, you're comparing the India China, and I'm wondering how much can you attribute the difference between India and China's economic growth due to the fact that China has so much constraint and control over its population relative to India? How much of a role does this play in making the comparison of economic growth between two countries?
I think it plays a role for sure, but India can do a much higher GDP growth rate even within the current political system. In the end, we may be, and it's also important to realize that China's current political system is now dysfunctional. They are having a hard time. It was a system that worked for them very well when they were looking for low income jobs to create just manufacturing jobs. But one example of their failure is the one child policy. The one child policy has distorted their population, and they are essentially now an old country. They are an old country. They already have the problems of an old country without the economic impact or the growth of an old country. They're running out of workers. And now they're saying, have two children, have three children. But there's nobody who's willing to have two children or three children. And their policies of control. So this is a clear failure of the policies of control, right? And it is hard to believe that they will be able to control the workers that they were able to do some time back. They are no longer able to do it. So their control of the financial system has really led to the banks being in big financial trouble. It has also led to a waste of money. They've created many new cities and nobody lives there. You can say you can't have three kids, you can't have two kids, but you cannot say, look, go and live in that city. Okay. Maybe you can, but they have not been able to. So they have ghost towns, money being wasted. So the waste in the political system, the waste brought about by the political system is now clear. So they are now facing major issues. I'm not a China expert. I'm sure there are people who know the economy much better than I do, but they are facing great difficulties, and that is why their growth rate has slowed down. The GDP growth rate, of course, they did quite well in COVID. They didn't have the same decline in GDP as India did. They had actually a very small decline and they have gone back up. But looking at it from the perspective of China itself, China is no longer able to have a, let us put it this way, their old economic model, political control has expired or is close to expiring. And they are having a hard time fixing it. And currently, the Prime Minister is saying that, look, this inequality is not going to work anymore. China is highly unequal, and he's trying to do a better wealth distribution. Why? Because the workers are saying, look, enough is enough. I worked too hard, too long. I can't take this anymore under your control. Give me more money. But the system doesn't give them more money. So China's economic model is fraying, and India's economic model can actually be improved enough. If they are growing at 6%, we can grow at 10% within the current political system. It's possible. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's possible.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, please. Go ahead. I can't see the name, but go ahead. You raised your hand.
Could you please unmute yourself?
Subodh, this
Yeah.
is Prosperous.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed the talk. But regarding your present question, China is going in a big way
By
into
the way,
value.
let me hang on. Professor Dwara is a leading China expert. Okay, so let me introduce you to him. He is one of the world's leading China experts. I'm
No,
so
no,
glad
no.
that he's here. No, he is. It's just because he's my friend and he's a modest guy doesn't mean anything. He is
No,
one of
no.
the world's China experts. So let's hear what he has to say.
No, I'm not an expert on contemporary China for sure. I'm a historian, but I do have an interest. It seems to me I agree mostly with what you said about China, but they're going in for very high value added in AI, in robotics, in GPS, in surveillance system that the world is buying, including the liberal democratic world. And so I wonder what you think of that particular advantage and that particular strategy that it has developed. And these robots are already being used for older people, like
Yeah, so
Japan.
China has changed its economic model. They have brought in. They are willing to give any money to a Chinese person abroad who's a technical expert to come back. They're even willing to give money to U.S. citizens who want to come and set up technical facilities. And in the U.S., you have to apply for a grant to the National Science Foundation for 3 years. They say, forget it, we'll give you for 15 years. Just come and set it up here. Right? So, indeed, they are very successful in that strategy. They are going to be a major contender in batteries. They are already selling solar panels to everybody. They are developing electric cars. They are developing biotechnology. And it's a wake up call to India. It's a wake up call. There's just no way around it. That if you want to be having a high growth rate, I focused a lot but on the small and medium enterprises. But remember, at the end, I said India needs to be a leader in these technologies, and that's a direct competition to China. Now, of course, if they give the shift to this high value added approach only, then what is the average Chinese worker going to do? That's a problem because they don't have a well-paying job for those people, as I understand it. So yes, once you go, this is the US strategy to have an elite economic labor force, which creates Google, which creates Facebook, which creates Zoom, which creates all of these things. And that's what, you sell Boeing planes everywhere. And China is moving towards that. But then what do you do for the average Chinese worker? That's not clear. What is it that they are going to do in this new emerging system? It's not clear at all what they are going to do. Are they going to continue to make cheap stuff that is sold in India? Instead of buying Indian sarees, we buy Chinese sarees. Is that what they are going to do? No. So they are facing a crisis of a economy that is getting old. And as Professor Dwara mentioned, they're using Chinese robots and so on. So India needs to wake up to it. India needs to say, listen, we have the people, we have the technologies, and we can do it. So indeed, thank you for bringing that up. And no matter what he says, I respect. We are old friends. We have been friends for 60 years, 55 years, something like that. I know him very well. He is most distinguished speaker and an authority, and I'm really happy that he has agreed to be here and given us the benefits of his views. So it's not just the only young people, it's also some of my friends who are participating. And I hope that it's helpful to you. Okay, so thank you, Prasanjit. We call him Bhaiti, so I'll say thank you, Bhaiti.
So even we are happy to see such the people of great knowledge in the
Okay,
field,
and I'll
and
let you
having
in.
a great
I'll
discussion over
let you
here.
in on. I'll let you in on another secret. The person who asked that question, right, about China
Mm.
is my son.
Yeah.
He's,
Okay. Okay.
I had not asked him to join, but he was keen to join. He's doing a PhD in chemistry, and he asked the question.
Oh,
I know who it is because he's my son. So, but he didn't. He just gave his name. He didn't give his last name. He's my son. So
Okay. That's a great
I
surprise
thought
for
I
us.
should. All right. Anybody else has a question?
Yeah.
I'll be happy to answer.
So you can just unmute yourself and ask the question or comment or anything like what you feel about this session. So we could wait for
Anybody
another
else?
2 minutes, maybe. Yeah.
1 minute's enough. If everybody
Yeah.
wants to ask, it's 1 minute is enough, I think. Okay, I think we are done. So let's call this as a close.
Yeah.
And let me
so
thank all of I recognize some of the people who are my friends of my age who have kindly spent quite a bit of their time over here. I'm really thankful to them because I didn't realize that they would be interested enough. But it has been my pleasure to be a speaker here. And as I said, if enough people want to form a discussion forum, a free public discussion forum on these issues on the internet, I'll be glad to set it up. But it'll be open to all, but only those who can say that, look, I know what's in the book or what's in Professor Mathur's mind. I want to criticize or I want to support. And then they will be the contributors. But I do want it to happen. And thank you, Nandu and Naveen and Alan,
Alan.
for organizing this. And let's see where we take it from here. So, okay, everybody, thank
sure.
you very much and bye.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
thank you,
Yeah,
thank you so much, sir.
bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.